I'm talking to Marta Andreasen, who's now a member of the European Parliament for the UK Independence Party, but she was formerly the European Commission's chief accountant. While she was in that job, she raised concerns about flaws in the Commission's accounting system, which she said left it vulnerable to fraud. Marta Andreasen, thanks for talking to us today. Now, were you a Eurosceptic when you joined the Commission as chief accountant?
No, I was not a Eurosceptic. In fact, I thought the Euro project was a project of cooperation. I thought they were sharing solutions among the different member states. So I was quite honored to be able to be part of this European Union, and also honored to be part of administrative reform that they were undergoing.
What happened, or what did you find out to make you change your mind?
Well, I found out that they had no control on the payments they were making out of the European Union budget. Basically, they didn't ask if people qualified to get the funding from the European Union. And I was responsible for the signature of those payments. So I had the highest responsibility, and I thought I needed to know if I was paying to the right person and for the right purpose. And they just didn't care and didn't allow me to make changes to be able to determine if we were making the right payment.
So what does that all mean?
Well, this means that EU funding is going to people who do not qualify for this, who do not need the funding, and who use it for other purposes. And this is very dangerous because, there are many other purposes for which the money can be used. And when they raise the money from European taxpayers, they are sort of saying this is going to be used for certain purposes. And to a certain extent, they are lying to the European taxpayer. I thought I was working on behalf of the European taxpayer, and my obligation was to make sure that payments were correct.
Others didn't see it like that, though, did they? And in fact, you were fired for blowing the whistle. Do you think anything's changed since?
I don't think anything has changed. I now sit in the Budgetary Control Committee, so the committee in the Parliament that oversees the payments out of the budget. And I sit in the Budget Committee, the committee that oversees the planning of the budget. And in both committees, I can see that they have no respect for European taxpayers' money. And I don't see that fundamental changes that they should make have taken place. Once anybody who makes a payment in normal world would take care that the payment would ask the questions, where is this payment going to? What is the purpose? And these questions are not asked by the Commission. Then the solution is to blame the member states. Oh, we gave the money to the UK. It's the UK who is committing the irregularities. Well, yes, but you pay the money out. Did you ask the proper questions? No, they don't. So for me, nothing has changed. A lot of window dressing, but nothing else.
And are you suggesting that the Commission is being defrauded? And if so, who by?
Well, it's being defrauded to a certain extent. Talking about fraud is always very problematic because obviously you have to prove it. And it's very difficult to prove fraud in places where you don't have adequate systems to control. Okay? There is no audit trail. So it's very difficult to prove it. But, there are beneficiaries who are getting the money without being qualified to get the money. That is the essence of the situation.
Do you think Brussels is capable of reform? Is there a will to tighten practices like that up?
No, I don't think there is any will to tighten these practices because they have a different agenda. They want to promote the European Union project. And to promote this project, they want to be able to give the money to the people who will support the project, not the people who really care about the use of the funds in a proper way, not the people who are going to use this funding to grow the economy of a certain member state, but the people who will promote the European Union project.
How deeply entrenched do you think vested interests are in Brussels? Who are the real power players?
Well, from my experience in the Commission, fundamentally, but also now that I'm in the Parliament, the powerful people in the EU are the Directors General in the European Commission. The European Commission has different directorates with different substantive issues. So you have environment, economy, agriculture, and these Director Generals are the ones who hold the power. You know, the commissioners come and go every 5 years, but this Director General normally have been there for decades, and they hold the power. They know who they need to give the funding to get the support.
We're in times of austerity at the moment, and members all across Europe are cutting their state spending. Is there any sign that Brussels is doing the same?
No, absolutely. You know, last night we spent 6 hours approving in the Budget Committee the 2012 budget. And they are asking for a over 4% increase. I was even asking for decreases, but fundamentally saying we should at least reduce the allowances for the MEPs. And they don't want to reduce them. I mean, I think we should show the example. And the MEPs themselves don't want any reduction. And the Council of Ministers had decided they wouldn't give more than a 2% increase. And here the Parliament goes back and says, no, we want more than 4% increase. So I don't think there is no will to reduce. And I am a lonely voice, really, in the Parliament in what refers to reduction of the budget.
And ultimately, is your goal to, as it were, destroy the system from within?
Ultimately, my role or my goal is to make people in the UK, but also around the rest of Europe, know the truth about the European Union project, know the truth about how their money is being spent. This is my goal. And then it's up to people to react to this new information or to this information, even if it's not new for some people. You know, we are now in the middle of a crisis, and people think, well, the EU budget has nothing to do with the crisis. But I will give you an example. Greece was brought into the Eurozone when it didn't qualify to get into the Eurozone. Now people say Greece lied. Well, maybe in their accounts, but the European Commission has a statistics office, Eurostat, who should have challenged the figures, and they didn't challenge. They kept silent. 10 years later, they realize, oh, something is wrong. But they are there. They have 1,000 people working in Eurostat to analyze the figures, so they should have come up. Another thing, the budget was used to grow the economy of all these countries that came into the Eurozone. Greece got 60 billion pounds in the last 20 years out of the European Union budget. The question is, where did the money go? Because the Greek economy has not grown. So where did the money grow?
William Hague, the UK's Foreign Secretary, says that the EU budget is now under control. Is that the truth?
No, I think it's not the truth. I have challenged his speech because he doesn't know. He thinks it's under control because he's asking for a freeze in the budget. But while he was talking about the freeze, there was somebody, the Budget Committee was trying to vote in favor of an increase of 4%. So it's not under control. And also, we don't know exactly where the money is going. And I think we should know, it's visible for everybody, as I told you, why is it that Greece hasn't grown its economy? Italy, Spain, Portugal. Where are all the structural funds that we have been paying for the last decade? So, no, it's not under control.
Members of Parliament here in the UK now look set to hold a debate on whether there should be a referendum on Britain's membership of the European Union. Do you think Britain is hooked on the EU, despite talking about wanting to leave?
Well, I think that the government might be hooked to the European Union. I don't think that the country as a whole is hooked to the European Union. I think the UK could leave the European Union and negotiate another type of relationship Well, there are people who are very critical about, what would happen, how would we trade. Well, the UK traded and existed before the European Union, so I think it could go back to do this. The UK is one of the biggest importers from the European Union, so 42% of the imports come from the European Union. So I think the UK is in a very solid position. And I think it would be healthy, not only for the UK, but for the rest of the member states, because it would force a renegotiation of the European Union and all the trade agreements that we have. I don't see, of course, this doesn't happen in 24 hours. I mean, of course, now we have 70% of the legislation coming from the EU. Of course, there would be an interim period where the UK would have to develop new legislation of its own. I mean, of course, it doesn't happen in 24 hours. But we first have to make the decision to leave and then start the process.
Eurozone countries are staring down the barrel of a gun, basically, but what EU grandees are talking about is enforcing more fiscal union in the face of economic collapse, which seems like a desperate measure. Who stands to gain the most from keeping Europe together?
I think it's the Directors General, the bureaucracy in Brussels, who stands to gain. It is these people who have been pushing the project all along, and they want this European Union where they will hold the power over all the member states.
And finally, as a Eurosceptic, do you feel in any way vindicated by what's going on in the Eurozone at the moment?
Sadly, yes, I feel vindicated because, if people had heard and had sort of responded to my claims 10 years ago, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So, yes, I feel vindicated, but it's sad to say this because we could have prevented all that's happening today.
Marta Andreasen, thank you very much.
Thank you.